Tag, meine Damen and Herren. Bienvenidos and welcome back to This Old Mine. Today I'm going to show you how to flash cook a turkey in 4 seconds. Well, actually, no. We're going to do a little copper melting today. This copper that I have here. Fortunately, I didn't have to strip this copper. This is left over from the forest fire days when the fire came through and burnt all the wiring that they had laying around. So we're just going to load it up in the crucible and melt it. To do so, we got to bring it up to about 1984 degrees. We'll take it up a little bit higher than that just so that we have time to pour it so it doesn't solidify in the crucible. So we'll pack this stuff in here and load it up into the furnace. Now, since this is number 1 copper, good clean copper, we're not going to use any flux. Now, I wouldn't suggest putting your hand into a furnace unless you are absolutely positive it's turned off. Especially this one. It'll flash fry your hand in a heartbeat. This is how you light it. You look away and wait for the boom. You don't want to be looking into the furnace when you light it. You will lose your eyebrows. Now we'll let it warm up. We put the crucible in and let it warm up gradually with the furnace till we get to a working temperature, and then we'll crank it up and go for broke. Once it's warmed up, we close the top to retain the heat, and our cooking process will begin. These are my lifting tongs. I use these to lift the crucible out of the furnace. You don't want to grab it with a pair of pliers when that crucible is red hot. You can break it, shatter it, and dump all your molten metal all over the place. And this is my pouring ladle. It fits around the crucible. This bar slides across the top to keep it from falling out. And we pour the charge out into whatever mold we need. These devices I cobbled together from scraps and bits, and they do a pretty good job. I'm proud of them. Of course, my level of pride seems to be pretty low. You see the green flame jumping around the crucible here. That means we're getting close to the temperature of melting. That's actually copper oxides that are burning off. Do a green flame. Let's take a temperature reading and see how close we are. We're at 1765 degrees Fahrenheit. We've got a couple hundred more to go before we start melting. We'll close the furnace back up, keep the heat in, and wait for it to melt. Since the charge has settled down a little bit into the crucible with the heat, we're going to try and put some more copper in, see if we can increase our charge. Bring you up closer so you can see inside the furnace. You can gaze into the depths of hell, or just look at the fire if you want. It's getting nice and red and toasty in there. Put this copper in here. Maybe not. That's a little bit too big of a piece. We'll grab a smaller piece and put that in. This one will fit a little bit better. So it's smaller and folded up so it'll set on the crucible and not hang out over the top. Last thing you want to do is start dropping molten metal down into the bottom of the furnace. Once it gets down there, it's difficult to clean out. And there we are. Yeah, it's not too hot. It'll get hotter, don't worry. Amazing how much temperature you get out of propane. You actually get enough to melt steel. there you see the molten copper in the crucible, which is glowing red hot. In fact, the burner location on the inside of the furnace, it's actually white hot. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, we've got a temperature of 2,230 degrees. That's plenty hot. We're a couple hundred degrees over, so we'll have plenty more time. I'm going to use this old cupcake mold to pour out a few biscuits of copper. Use that as mold for a few of them. And then here I've created a sand cast out of an old piece of aluminum that I cast, so it's a copy of a copy. So I don't expect it to come out very good, but I'm not looking for good, I'm just looking for metal. So here's the picking forks, or the lifting tongs. Get those in there. We have a lock on the top so the crucible doesn't slip out. We'll set those down into our pouring ladle and lift the pouring ladle up around the crucible. Slide our safety bar over and we'll pour some copper. Going first for the sand mold. That went in nice. The sand isn't too wet, so it doesn't sputter like that just did. If you pour molten metal into anything that has any moisture in it, the moisture immediately turns to steam, or you get it flashed to steam, and it will spit metal out. That goes for any metals. Coming in contact with water is a bad deal. Fortunately, I avoided getting splattered. And to make sure your crucibles last a decent period of time, you don't want them to just air dry or air cool. It cools them down too fast. So we'll put them back in the furnace and let them cool. Here's our sand cast. You can still see the copper is glowing red in there. And the cast iron mold, cupcake mold, the cupcakes have basically solidified. This is our sand cast. It's kind of a blurry picture, but you notice right in the center of the mold, or right in the center of the metal, is a, I don't know, it looks like a nipple sticking up, a big pimple. Apparently when copper cools, it'll shrink and it pushes the center, or the thickest part, up. Now these are our cupcakes. Still a bit hot, so we'll have to let them cool. I'm going to wait on the sand cast, make sure it cools before I demold it. Nothing like breaking open a mold and having molten metal surprise you. We're going to cool our cupcakes down the fast way in some water. They're pretty much solid right now, but I'm just going to take the surface temperature out of them. Here's our first one. Sizzle, sizzle. Yeah, there you go. You see the nice coppery color? If you polish them up, they almost look like gold. I'll probably polish these up later down the line and stick them inside of my safe so it looks like I have gold when I open it. Kind of, you know, trying to impress people. So if you see golden cupcakes, don't be fooled. Oops. Crap, I hope it's not too hot. Time to do some diving. Yeah, it's cool. And we're going to sand this down a little bit. See if we can get some of the color off to come out on it. I'm sanding the top layer of it, the top face of it, which actually didn't work out too well. Sanded a little bit on the high spots. Actually, that's the bottom face. Sanded off some of the high spots, brought some color out, but we're going to have to take this to a grinder and a sander to get it to look really nice. And then a buffing wheel even. That's a lot of work just for a chunk of copper. Now this copper would be considered number 1 copper, which is about $3.70 a pound. And these cupcakes weigh anywhere from 3/4 of a pound to 1 pound. So, being that we have different size ones, we've got about 3 pounds there total. Now we're going to demold our sand casting. And there it is. Not too impressive, being that it's got sand stuck on it. But it will clean up as well. Let's dip it in the water. We'll grab it by the nipple and take it for a swim. See, the top is kind of a reddish color. That tells me that top layer was starting to oxidize, being that it was exposed to air while it was cooling. But the bottom part of it that was in the sand has some coppery color to it. Most of it just looks like crap. So here I'm taking a wire brush to it. Get a baseline to see how much work it's going to take to clean them off. And in doing this, I found out all it does is knock the sand loose. Doesn't bring out any of the color. It'd probably take me a month to clean this thing up with a wire brush. So we'll just knock the sand off of it and get it ready for a grinder. But all in all, it wasn't too bad. That block right there weighs about 10 pounds. And then I got 3 pounds in biscuits. So I've got 13 pounds of copper ready to go to the scrap yard. Figure probably get $3 a pound for it. Well, that's about it for today. Hope you enjoyed the tour. Complimentary refreshments will be served in the garden. And don't forget to visit the gift shop. See ya!